Good afternoon and welcome to the COVID-19 update on Channels Television. I'm Millicent Walker. Here are some of the highlights. Federal government moves to cushion economic effect of COVID-19 as it extends distribution of agricultural produce to farmers in Cross River State, as the state government also rolls out credit scheme. Widows in Delta State, Central and South districts get palliatives, receive melon shelling machines and generating sets from the state government. And African Union calls for an aggressive and bold action to flatten the curve against COVID-19 on the continent as Africa's virus cases pass 1 million. Nigeria currently has a total of 11,884 active cases of COVID-19 in all the isolation centers across the country, according to the latest figures from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and CDC, and some of them might also be managed at home using the home model. But this is about 26.2% of the latest total, 45,244 confirmed cases of the virus, as announced by the center last night, with 354 new infections recorded. Now, the total number of fatalities also stands at 930. The new cases are in 16 states and the Federal Capital Territory, which has the highest number of about 78 infections. Lagos comes next with 76. Kaduna recorded 23 cases last night. Ebonyi 19, 18 in Oyo, Nasarawa and Rivers 17 each. Delta 16, 15 in Kwara, 13 in Akwa Ibom. Edo and Ogun recorded 12 each, 11 in Plateau, 9 in Kano, Bauchi, Benue and Ekiti recorded 6 cases each. Now, health workers in Bauchi State have commenced an industrial action over deductions in their salaries and allowances. The Joint Health Sector Union of Nigeria, Bauchi State branch, has directed its members across the 20 local government areas of the state to down tools indefinitely from midnight today. The state's chairman of the union says the industrial action became necessary following government's inaction after the expiration of the 2 weeks ultimatum given to it to resolve pending issues.
Principally, what really pushed us to go for the strike, it was deductions from our salary, one kind of outrageous deduction from the salaries of our members on I think for the month of June and July as well. When it happens, we wrote to the government that why these deductions, and it's not supposed to be like that because it's our own professional allowances, like ship duty allowance, call duty allowance, teaching allowance, and other allowances as well. So when we wrote to them, we gave them 2 weeks within which at least they should reverse it. And they promised us that they are going to reverse it, that it's just a problem of salary administration that they have gotten. So we allow them, we give them time whether they will refund it back, but to our greatest surprise, they could not. We even add another, at the end of the expiration of the 2 weeks that we have earlier given them, we still extend it to another 2 weeks with the hope that at the end of the month is going to be ratified. Very unfortunate, to our greatest surprise and dismay, when we see the salaries of July is still deducted.
Now, 48 widows across Delta Central and Delta South senatorial districts of the state have been empowered with melon shelling machines and generating sets as palliatives. According to the state government, it is a gesture aimed at reducing the adverse economic effect of the coronavirus on vulnerable households. The beneficiaries, who are not part of the 5,607 widows enrolled in the Delta Widows Welfare Scheme, is an intervention program under which the state government pays monthly stipends for the upkeep of their homes. According to the government, the exercise will be replicated in Delta North Senatorial District, and the palliatives hoping that it would accommodate more widows in the state.
Empowerment to persons to be able to stand the crunch, the economic crunch as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. So what you are witnessing today is an effort by the governor to touch on the economic interest of these widows so as to alleviate their pain and suffering that is as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The ongoing effort to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 in the agricultural sector across the country, the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, alongside the Cross River State Governor, they flagged off the distribution of agricultural inputs to farmers in Cross River State to boost the production capacity in the country and avert food scarcity in 2021. Speaking at the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, Murtala Mohammed Highway in Calabar, Mr. Nanono said the effort of the distribution of inputs, agricultural inputs, is part of the ministry's intervention to reduce the effect of COVID-19 pandemic. The state governor, on his part, challenged Cross Riverians to own a farm and enjoy the support from the state government as loans have been made available to women in agriculture at minimal interest rates.
This gathering is one of our efforts to work hand in hand with state governments and other relevant stakeholders to assist in ensuring food security, economic growth, and job creation, especially in the face of COVID-19 pandemic. It is therefore my pleasure to be here with you today to roll out the distribution of agricultural input to smallholder farmers, which include different categories of cocoa seedlings, improved oil palm sprouted nuts and cashew nut seeds, and the crop protection chemical as part of the minister's intervention to reduce the effect of COVID pandemic on agricultural production in Nigeria and avert food scarcity in 2021.
If you don't have a farm, you have no business in the 21st century. The post-COVID-19 pandemic has become very clear that only farmers have the capacity to survive, even if all the doors are closed. And so I challenge every one of you to own a farm and to show me indeed that your farm is working.
Now, according to the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, the measures put in place for the current phase 2 of the eased COVID-19 lockdown shall be maintained with some adjustments. Now, some of the adjustments, according to the PTF, is maintaining the current nationwide curfew from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., the restrictions on mass gatherings with specific emphasis protecting the vulnerable populations, the gradual reopening of international air flights within established parameters, also the reopening of rail transportation within established parameters as well, the granting permission to exit classes to resume ahead of examinations, limiting government meetings to virtual as much as possible, the lifting of restrictions on outdoor communal sports, opening of recreational parks for supervised exercise, mandatory use of the non-medical face mask in public spaces, and of course the other safety protocols, the restrictions in education and the entertainment sector. Our government believes that all of these steps will help consolidate the gains made thus far and position the country to effectively overcome the pandemic going forward. Let's try to understand the epidemiology, the surveillance and the data that the PTF arrived at some of those measures. Joining us in our Lagos studio is Dr. Oluwatosin Akinshola. He's a lecturer, epidemiology, biostatistics, College of Medicine, University of Lagos. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
All right. Now, from looking at, all of those adjustments from the Presidential Task Force, do you agree with the recommendations? And this is retaining the current phase of that lockdown ease in its response.
Absolutely. I would say that we agree with the recommendation. That is the PTF, Presidential Task Force. Well, the fact is that we need to come to terms that in view of this prevalence of COVID-19 pandemic, you have to understand the fact that the issue of life and livelihood, you have to see how I can manage it too. Because looking at what is presently happening, this pandemic will not go too soon. So, and in order for us to define a way in which we can manage the life and livelihood, that is the reason why I think it's necessary to adjust this protocol by the Presidential Task Force.
But as much as we're trying to balance it, what perhaps are you seeing in terms of the trends, the trajectory of the way the virus is, especially with the daily cases that we're recording each day?
Well, for the past few weeks, let's say about 2 weeks ago, I think we actually have a downward trend a little. And for the fact that we have a downward trend, that doesn't mean that we are flattening the curve, because we cannot actually totally eradicate this condition for now, but how we can flatten it. But looking at the situation of things, we find that the government has their own role to play by enforcing all the protocols, social distancing, use of face masks. Whereas individually too, we also need to discipline ourselves. Discipline comes individually. Government alone cannot achieve it. Even if the government put all the measures in place for this disease to mitigate the effect of the disease, but individually, are we actually obeying all the protocols? Because if we are not obeying the protocols, we are nowhere to go for now.
Oh, we have joining us via Skype Dr. Zainab Mahmood, a cardiology fellow at Washington University in St. Louis. She joins us from the US. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Dr. Mahmood, let's look at the treatment landscape, and this is of COVID-19 around the world. What's perhaps is your perception of what countries are using, and this is to ensure that people recover from COVID-19?
Right. So, as you know, COVID-19 is all new to us. So, I know a number of countries have tried several medications and trials and various methods to see what can work. And so far, what we know is nothing has been shown to specifically work against eradication of COVID-19. And the treatment has specifically really been supportive treatment, meaning getting people through the disease and trying to treat whatever complications they may have. There have been several trials. I think the most controversial one to date has been hydroxychloroquine. And really, the several trials that have occurred, randomized control trials, as we know, have not really shown any that would work. The promising ones have been remdesivir, plasma, convalescent plasma, meaning blood sample from people that have recovered from COVID, have been used in trial methods to see if people with COVID can recover faster with plasma from people that have already gotten the disease. So those are really the two promising. The other ones that have been tried and have shown to work a little bit have been steroids, dexamethasone. Those are really the three, I would say, the three medications that have been shown to work around the world with some little progress.
So if we look at the non-pharmaceutical measures, which a lot of emphasis is being placed on, the WHO is saying that the World Mask Week starts today. Would you say to a large extent that the wearing of the face mask has helped countries curtail the spread of COVID-19?
Absolutely, and I think what we need to learn is from countries that have managed to kind of so-called in quotes flatten the curve, and those are countries that have had widespread mask use from initial stages. Where in the United States, we were kind of late to the game in terms of wearing face masks, but in states that have enforced state masks, we have seen improvements in their disease increase, as you know, incidents compared to other states that have been late to enforce those mandates.
All right. We'd like to thank you, Dr. Zainab Mahmood, a cardiology fellow at Washington University in St. Louis. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Doctor, we'll come back to you, especially asking you the way forward, seeing as we're also, about to start resumption of international flights. A number of people are a bit apprehensive and saying it's perhaps a little too soon. We'll come back. Let's take a break. More on the COVID-19 updates when we return. Welcome back. Good to have Dr. Oluwatosin Akishola with us. So looking at the outlook, the measures in place by the PTF, the fears of, opening up too soon, do you think that this is the right time? We just have about 11,800 cases that are still active in isolation centers across Nigeria.
Actually, the fundamental problem is not about even opening up too soon. Is that are we actually capturing all the COVID-19 carriers? That's the fundamental problem. We have some countries too who have been opening their space gradually. For example, as at June, that's about 2 months ago, the research we did, we found out that averagely, Nigeria, we are doing about our contract tracing, number of testing, about 2,300 a day. But we found that for us to be able to capture all the COVID-19 carriers, we need to be doing about 7,200. So that is where the fundamental problem. So if actually we are not capturing all the people that are COVID-19 carriers, no matter the kind of measures, restrictions we put in place, we are still going to find it difficult to be able to nip this
virus in the bud.
Yes.
We appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Dr. Oluwatosin Akishola, Lecturer Epidemiology, Biostatistics, College of Medicine, UNILAG. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Now, fears over a new wave of coronavirus infections have swept around the world, with restrictions being reimposed in places from the Philippines to Australia. For the global economy, everything rests on the race for a vaccine. Deutsche Welle correspondent from Berlin, Chelsea Delany, joins us now for more. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, thanks. Why are there conflicting messages? I mean, we've been seeing interesting comments in recent days from President Trump to the WHO. Why are there conflicting messages about the timeline for a vaccine?
Well, of course, every country, every company wants to be the first to really find this vaccine. So we are seeing just a mad dash around the world to find a vaccine for the coronavirus, and billions of dollars are being spent on this. So there are about 200 different vaccines in development right now, and all are being developed in different companies in different countries and at different timelines. So that's one of the reasons why we're seeing so many different numbers thrown around. But it does appear that there could be some sort of vaccine available this year. We've heard from some of the big pharmaceutical giants like Pfizer, AstraZeneca, that they are getting close to sort of finishing the regulatory steps to get there. So it does appear that could be coming soon, but there are still a lot of caveats to this, in part because even once a vaccine is green-lighted by regulators, it's still going to take much longer to get the manufacturing power in place to make this widely distributed, to get just distribution chains up and running. So even if we do see a vaccine by November, by December, it will likely be several more months, if not years, before this vaccine is really available to the average person.
We've also heard the director of WHO this week stress that vaccine must be made available globally, or else economies will suffer. We've already seen vaccine nationalism on the rise. Can WHO actually ensure that a vaccine is shared?
This is certainly a major concern for the entire world right now, is that the fate of these vaccines and the accessibility of these vaccines is going to depend on how much money you have. So we've seen countries like the United States or Germany striking these really big multi-billion-dollar deals with drug developers to secure access to vaccines, and that would really leave a lot of countries and a lot of people that don't have access to the same amount of financial resources. That would really leave them behind and complicate the entire economic recovery from this virus. So the WHO is proposing that companies should be sharing their resources, that they should be sharing the data and the technology behind the vaccines they're developing. But companies are obviously quite hesitant to do that. They are investing a lot of money into these vaccines, and they don't want to be basically giving them away for free. And at the political level, we've seen a lot of different views on this, and sort of a lot of contention about how to make this go forward. So at this point, there isn't really a clear strategy for making sure that this vaccine is given to the entire world.
While a lot of people are looking forward to November, to some of the dates that have been put out, earliest dates for a vaccine for COVID-19, is that a silver bullet? Will the global economy return to its previous self, or perhaps are there some potential long-term consequences?
So the way that this is being discussed right now, a lot of people do seem to think that once a vaccine is approved, that the world will instantly return to how it was before. But a lot of experts are saying that that's quite unlikely because, for one, there's still a lot of questions, and the timeline for this vaccine being widely available is quite long. So even once it's approved, even once it does start hitting the market, it will be a long time before the entire world has access to it. But also, in the meantime, we've seen just devastation to the global economy, and many businesses have already gone under. Many people have lost jobs permanently. So even if we do see the vaccine anytime soon, we will still have permanent fallout from this that we'll see in the global economy.
Well, we hope we perhaps get things back on track as quickly as possible and get our lives back together. Thank you so much, Chelsea Delany, Deutsche Welle correspondent. Thank you for joining us on the program. Now, the African Union Centers for Disease Control says a bold and aggressive action is needed as the continent passes the 1 million mark in coronavirus cases. More than 22,000 people have so far died across Africa from COVID-19, while over 690,000 have recovered. South Africa is the hardest hit, accounting for more than half of the total number of registered infections. Egypt is in second place, followed by Nigeria, Ghana, Algeria, Morocco, and Kenya.
More than 1 million people across Africa have now been confirmed to have had the new coronavirus, as health experts warn the peak of the pandemic is yet to hit the continent. The somber milestone, reported by the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on Friday, comes more than 5 months after Egypt reported the continent's first confirmed cases of the virus on February the 14th. In South Korea, thousands of trainee doctors have begun a strike in Seoul to protest against the government plan to boost the number of medical students in the country, arguing it will be a poor use of additional funding for the sector. Trainee doctors held up placards with some reading, "Interns and residents are not slaves," and "Intern residents are the future of South Korea," during the protest in the capital city. Australia is preparing for further domestic border closures as Victoria State announced another daily record high for the number of COVID-19 infections. Victoria, the country's second most populous state, reported on Friday 450 new COVID-19 cases and 11 deaths in the previous 24 hours. The state has nearly 8,000 active COVID-19 cases. And residents in Manila are blaming government shortcomings for a new spike in COVID-19 cases in the Philippines as the country hit the highest number of infections in Southeast Asia. The Philippines recorded 3,561 new infections, taking its total confirmed cases to over 119,000, higher than Indonesia at 118,753 infections.
For more updates, you can take a look at our website, channelstv.com. It has the latest updates on the pandemic. All you need to do is log on and you can see our top stories there. Coronavirus cases worldwide passing 19 million, nearing 20 million. But of course, it's having over 10 million people who have recovered across the world. All at your fingertips, channelstv.com. That's the program this afternoon. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Nwaka. Stay safe.